Now, from the KFDX studios, the state representative debate with incumbent James Frank and opponent Walter Coppage. KFDX 3 News, your local election headquarters.
Hello from your local election headquarters. Welcome to the KFDX half-hour debate with the candidates for 69th House District. I'm Daryl Franklin.
And I'm Carney Porter. This evening, we're joined by incumbent Republican James Frank and the Democrat challenger Walter Coppage, both from Wichita Falls.
Now, here's a quick rundown of the rules for this debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the main question, 60 seconds for rebuttal, and if needed, 60 seconds for follow-ups.
When time is up, a candidate will hear this bell. And there are no opening statements, but each candidate will get 90 seconds for closing remarks.
No, let's go ahead and get to it then. Before this debate, we had a coin toss to see who would go first, and it looks as though Representative Frank is going to take the very first question from Carney.
That is right, so let's get right to that opening question. So, Representative Frank, the U.S. Supreme Court has rejected the Biden administration's attempt to require Texas hospitals to provide emergency abortion care. Do you agree with that decision?
Yes, I think, abortion obviously is a very challenging issue for a lot of people. I think ultimately it comes down to one thing that often we can't agree on, which is when life begins. Because when life begins, I believe the government is and should and is in its rightful place to protect life. If people don't agree that a baby is life in the womb, then I can see that they would think that there's never an opportunity that the government should step in. So, yes, I do agree with that.
All right, and Mr. Coppage, same question. Do you agree with the Supreme Court's decision?
No, I do not. All Texans deserve the freedom to make their own decisions about their own body, their own health care, and their own future. Women deserve the freedom to decide if, when, and with whom to start a family. I trust Texas women to make their own health care decisions.
Moving on to the next question. Mr. Coppage, you have said that immigrants that come into this country from Mexico need our help, and we need them, saying that they should not be turned away. Does this include the illegal entries, and do you support the pathway to citizenship for all who enter this country?
America is the land of opportunity, and the entire world knows that. Nobody is walking 1,000 miles to get into Russia. Border security is important. The immigration system needs a complete overhaul, and everyone knows that. But the former president told his Republican network in Washington, D.C. not to pass border protection. So they threw away the bipartisan work of 4 months just to comply with his wish. We need immigrants, and we will be less if we turn away those that need our help. It is important to know who is coming into our country, but we can all use the help in the next 10 years. We need to change the talking points and look for what we can accomplish with an overhauled immigration system.
Representative Frank, same question to you. Do you support the pathway to citizenship for all who enter this country?
Well, the question of pathway to citizenship, we have a pathway to citizenship right now that people get in legally. What is clear with this administration is they do not care whether there's a pathway or not. They are fine. They truly do have an open borders. It is fascinating to watch. All of a sudden in the last month, Vice President Harris become quite interested in the border and actually go down there for the first time. I do agree that we need immigration, but we have ways we have immigration now, and we have ways to do it legally. Do we need to improve it? Absolutely. That's done at the federal level. It definitely needs to be improved. It needs to be speeded up. But you cannot allow people who are coming in illegally to jump ahead of those who are doing it legally. Cannot do it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next question now. Mr. Coppage, do you support the measures that Governor Greg Abbott has taken with state resources to kind of stem the flow of immigrants which the federal government has not taken?
Governor Abbott has spent a lot of money trying to control the border because the federal government hasn't been able to accomplish it. However, what he's doing is he's pulling police officers, U.S. Marshals from other parts of Texas down to the border, leaving those areas less protected. And I think that there are some compromises that can be made, and I think that they need to talk more with the federal government about trying to cure the problems rather than simply trying to do it all on our own.
All right. Well, now, Representative Frank, the same question is for you. Where do you stand on this?
Look, there's no question the federal government could stop the flow of illegal immigrants if they wanted to. They are choosing to not do it. They are choosing to disobey the laws of this land and are choosing to allow a free flow of people. They could stop it if they want to, and we as Texans are having to spend money that we should not, trying to control with our hands tied behind our backs, frankly. To me, it is frustrating when the federal government has responsibilities, they choose willingly to ignore them and not do them. It is an abdication of their responsibility, and it really, I mean, to me, it is an embarrassment as a society that we have laws. The federal government is choosing not to do them, and Texas taxpayers are having to bear the brunt of it. And so, yeah, I think I definitely agree with Governor Abbott's decisions on that issue.
Okay, let's move to the water issue that we all have here time and time again. It's something that never goes away. Representative Frank, do you support the Lake Ringgold project? And do you think it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars in time that it's going to take if it happens? Also, what other measures could be taken to increase our water supply?
I may take my full 2 minutes on this because the water issue really is pretty complicated. First, I think we've got to brag on the city for all the steps that it has taken, both with the direct reuse and then a switch to the indirect reuse, because now we're in a situation where even if we had the same climate events as we did that led us to the drought that ended in 2015, we would be in a much better position. Back then we were at about 20% or a little less than 20%. Now the lakes would be closer to 40% based on the steps that have been taken. So first thing is to brag on the city and the steps that have been taken. As it relates to Lake Ringgold, I actually believe we should use that to partner with the Metroplex groups because they want that water as well. At the end of the day, the more connected we are as a state, and I know Senator Perry's working on a very, very good plan coming with new water sources, the more connected we are with water around the state, the more secure all of us are. Right now in the state, we each have our own little fiefdoms where the water is not connected. In the worst drought in recorded history that ended in 2015, the lakes were at a 60% capacity in the state. But yet we had places that didn't have water, including coming very close to us. So I think Ringgold is part of the solution, but as a standalone lake, I do not have a lot of confidence that there will be water in that lake if there is no water in the other 3 lakes that we have. So if it can be used as a way to partner with the Metroplex or anyone else, then I think it is worth doing. If it is a standalone lake and then we're going to stay unconnected to the rest of the state or unconnected to other places, then I think it is $400 to $500 to $600 million that could be spent better other places.
Okay, Mr. Coppedge, what's your reaction? Do you support the Lake Ringgold project should it ever happen?
Y'all aren't going to believe this, but I completely agree with Representative Frank. We started Lake Ringgold years and years ago. We bought the property of a lot of it. Those ranchers have been leasing it from us for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And we have part of it. I agree that if we're going to finish it, we need to partner with Fort Worth and get it done get it done economically for us. We had great city leaders who were able to get us through using potable reuse and then dumping the excess water now into Lake Arrowhead through that pipeline. I think we've got a great deal going. I think we need to partner with Fort Worth and have them share most of the cost.
All right, now we'll move on to our next question, and we'll stay with you, Mr. Coppedge. Would you ever vote for a state income tax as an alternative to property or sales tax increases?
Yes, I would. And the reason is because 20 years ago, I did a study and went to civic organizations and presented a school finance project that I called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Senator Shapley out of Arizona, out of El Paso, and several other individuals had put on programs, and I elaborated on them. A 10%, any kind of income tax, which is obviously not in place now because we already voted to amend our Constitution so that we won't have an income tax. But we have a three-legged stool. If you just have sales tax and you just have property tax, you don't have a stool that will stand up. And we need something else, whether it be a consumption tax or expanded sales tax, something in order to help our schools. One of the things is that back in 2011, Texas had big problems with their budget. And the schools were cut $5 billion. Last year, we had a $38 billion surplus. But Governor Abbott chose not to give it to the schools because they did not pass school vouchers. We need to treat the schools better.
Right. And same question for you, Representative Frank. Do you believe we should vote for a state income tax as an alternative to property or sales taxes increasing?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think this may be the easiest question that's ever been asked. No, I would absolutely not vote for a state income tax. We don't have a revenue problem for the state government. We have a spending problem very often. We don't lack the revenue. And by the way, when government calls it revenue, they're really saying money that you have earned that we're not going to let you spend because we're smarter and we can spend it better. There are things that we need to spend money on, without a doubt, schools being one of them. But the idea that we somehow need another way to get into your pocket is very wrong, in my opinion. If you look at it, the sales tax revenues have outstripped inflation. We are doing, actually, the state does have a lot of revenue. We have multiple sources of revenue. We have the state income, or I'm sorry, we don't have state income tax. We have the sales tax. We have oil and gas revenue that we all share as a part of as a state. We have fees. We have property taxes also go to school finance. There are plenty of ways that we have revenue as a state, and we definitely do not need a state income tax.
Okay, this question here is from a viewer who asks, where do you stand on the school voucher ESA issue? And we'll start with you here on this question, Representative Frank.
Yeah, thank you very much. So school ESAs are something I'm strongly in support of. I think it's funny, when you look at this issue, it all comes down to whose eyes are you looking through? Whose perspective are you looking through? If you look at it through the eyes of a parent or a child that is in an educational situation, wherever it is, that doesn't fit them, and you say, do you want an option? The answer is always yes. In fact, I would say every single viewer out here wants options for their kids, wants options for their grandkid. The real question is whether you want other people to have those options, people that maybe can't afford it. Do you want them to have options? I believe the answer is yes. You do want them to have options. And I think it's not an indictment on schools. In fact, I tell the schools all the time, I think 35 states have done this. Public schools continue to thrive in those places. But you do have rare situations, no matter how good your school is, it is not a great fit for a kid or for the parent. To give them an option to do something different is the right thing. We look at it, we do this in almost everything. If you look at the way we run our colleges, we have scholarships that go to private schools. We have state schools. We have a mix. We have a college system that is the envy of the world. Yet and you look at the way we do Medicaid. You have funds. You can go to your provider of choice. You look at Section 8 housing. You get to decide where you live. All of those things are done with options. But for some reason in schools, we just say, nope, we are going to have this be the only one. And I think that is wrong. I think the best thing to me that it does, we have made the mistake over the years of transferring responsibility from the parent to schools. And schools do a great job, but schools cannot raise kids. We have to make sure that parents feel empowered to choose the education that best fits their child.
Okay, same question for you then, Mr. Coppage. Where do you stand on the school voucher ESA issue?
Whether you call it education savings account, school choice, or school vouchers, they're all the same thing. And I am against. There's a reason why school vouchers are being pushed now. That's because of Tim Dunn of Midland and Ferris Wilkes of Cisco. These are two billionaires who are Christian nationalists that want to destroy public education in Texas. and they want to have every child in Texas go to a private school, a private Christian school. In Houston, the kids go home to families that speak 160 different languages. That's because Houston is the most international city in the world. We can't have all go to a Christian school.
All right, well, let's go ahead now. We're going to switch gears now to a more environmental-based question, and we'll stay with you, Mr. Coppage. Do you think that oil fracking is harmful to the environment and actually even causing some of the earthquakes that have been felt here in the Wichita Falls area, and also should it be banned?
Oil and gas fracking is the reason that we lead the nation and the United States leads the world in oil production. Years ago, I worked for an oil and gas company, so I know a little bit about it. However, the problem is that the Texas Railroad Commission, which doesn't have anything to do with railroads, but controls the oil and gas industry in Texas and regulates it, they're not doing as good a job as they should, and there are operators out there who are not being as careful in their fracking. And when that happens, bad things happen. Fresh water can be contaminated. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. I'm not opposed to fracking. What I'm opposed to is indiscriminate fracking with no oversight by the Railroad Commission.
All right, we'll ask the same question of you, Representative Frank. Should the oil fracking be banned?
No, it should not be banned. Regulated, it already is regulated. However, I think there are some things that we are finding out on the disposal wells. I'm going to return the favor and say I agree with a number of what you said. I do think the Railroad Commission does a good job. I think they're, we may not agree on that part. I do think there's some things that need to be done. The fracking itself is actually not what's causing the earthquakes that have happened. It's actually the disposal wells. It's putting the water under pressure into the ground. That is what we think is causing it, and so there are steps that will be taken. I feel certain that will be taken to try to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I think certainly fracking, honestly, it has improved virtually everyone's life, including, honestly, when you look at the amount of even the CO2 that has been improved because of the switch to natural gas from coal, there's very little that this country has done that has helped the environment more than the switch from coal to natural gas.
Representative Frank, can you ever see yourself at any time in the future supporting a phase out of gasoline vehicles like you see in some states like California?
No, I can't. I can see that there may be a time where there's not, but that's when the technology arrives, whether that's with hydrogen cars. I mean, honestly, electric cars, I think we're seeing the limitation. We're seeing the amount of, honestly, metals that have to be mined to make the batteries, and we're seeing the limitations. They're heavier on the road. There's a lot of challenges with it, and I think that whatever we do needs to be based on the technology available. If all of a sudden they're hydrogen cars, you're not going to have to convince people to drive them because they will be cleaner and they will operate better. But I don't think the government is that smart to be able to say which ones we should and which ones we shouldn't. So no, I don't.
Where do you stand on that, Mr. Coppage? Should we go and start moving toward electric vehicles, or should it be mandated?
I agree with Representative Frank. I haven't bought one, don't plan to buy one. My sister drives a hybrid, but that's a far cry from total electric. We've got to have some improvement. We need to have longer range. We need to have more fueling stations where an electric car can get recharged rapidly. It's coming, but it's not here yet. And so I'll still drive my gas car and my old truck until something better comes along.
All right. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, we were going back, or there was some back and forth, and I think we're in agreement here. But it's always funny to me that people that are driving electric cars don't consider what the source of the electricity is. Often the source of the electricity is nuclear, or in Texas it is more than half is coming from natural gas. So you're driving an electric car, but you're burning gas to charge the car. Pretty important distinction, and it's pretty humorous. I think I've got people, I say this, I got people down in Austin that think just because they plug it in that they're not actually using natural gas or oil.
Mr. Coppage, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think we've said it all.
Okay.
All right. Well, we will stick with you for this next question, Mr. Coppage. Now, in light of the recent and devastating hurricanes, such as Hurricane Helene, do you agree with the Biden-Harris administration's belief that hurricanes are actually getting stronger because of the human activity that affects climate change?
Climate change is real. The hurricanes are getting stronger. They've got a hurricane class 5 hurricane headed to Florida now. Can I specifically say what is causing them? No. But we know that we're having an effect on nature, and we need to do what we can to solve some problems before things get really bad. The Biden-Harris administration is doing all they can to help all the hurricane victims from Helene. And I feel for those people being displaced, losing homes, losing family members, losing businesses. And a lot of them are going to be out of pocket and suffering for at least 6 months. And my prayers go out to them.
Absolutely. Now we'll ask the same question of you, Representative Frank. Do you agree with the Biden and Harris administration's belief that the hurricanes are getting stronger because of man-made effects?
I really do not know. I'd have to look at the data. I have seen conflicting reports. It's one of the challenges of actually trying to find accurate information these days. I've seen reports showing there's less hurricanes, less severe hurricanes. I think Galveston would, from back in the early 1900s would say there's pretty severe ones back then. So I really don't know. I do think there are things that we always need to do to make sure that we keep the environment as clean as possible, and a lot of things that we're doing in society is actually making things more clean, more prosperous. Frankly, the more things that we do over in the U.S. make the air a lot cleaner than allowing China to do all the manufacturing. When you look at you look at the real carbon emissions, they're coming from China, not from the United States. We are keeping pretty flat line on that. In terms of the disaster response, I think it has been a bit of a disaster. I think, it appears FEMA's running out of money because it's being spent other places other than with our citizens, and certainly that's where it should be spent.
Okay, Representative Frank, this question's for you, starting with you. The Texas Supreme Court blocked a challenge from the Texas Attorney General and allowed the state fair's ban on firearms to stand. Do you believe government-owned public places should be allowed to ban guns?
I don't know. I think from what I read of the report, the Supreme Court wanted to uphold it, but maybe was looking for a little different question. Look, I think at the end of the day, we are safer when good people have guns, as opposed to, if you look at the vast majority of mass shootings take place in gun-free zones, because people that shoot other people are typically cowards. And if they think other people might have a gun, they are less likely to do something. That is just statistical fact. Cowards go where they know they're not going to be shot back at.
Okay, Mr. Coppage, your opinion on that?
Guns, guns, and more guns will not protect us if we continue to loosen the laws and believe it is everyone's right to own and carry any gun in public. An AR-15 gun has such firepower that children must be identified by their DNA or the shoes they wore to school on the last day of their lives. I don't understand a governor who goes to an elementary school after a school shooting and says, and let me emphasize something that I know you all know, but the reality is, as horrible as what happened, it could have been worse. Senator Ted Cruz shows up to offer thoughts and prayers, but saves his real message of no restrictions for gun sales for the NRA convention in Houston.
Okay, Mr. Coppage, thank you very much for your response there. Now, it goes very fast, doesn't it? A half hour. It is time now for our closing statements to begin. And Representative Frank, you won the coin toss at the top. That meant that Mr. Coppage had the opportunity to take his closing statement or give it first or second, and he is elected to go second. So we will start with you, Representative Frank.
All right, very good. First, thank you all for hosting this. I think it's very important that people get an opportunity to hear from both sides. I know Mr. Coppage is running to give people options, and I hope that, when you hear the things that I'm in favor of, no state income tax and those type of things, that I think that you will want me to continue to represent you. If you don't, that's all right too. But anyway, it has been a pleasure to be able to serve for the last 12 years. I spent most of my time in the child welfare arena. I spent a lot of time on health care costs. We didn't talk about that during this debate, but I've spent a lot of time trying to. We overpay very badly for health care in this country. Most of the reason is because of either the federal government's action or many times inaction, but there are things we can do at the state level to address that. It is my hope that you will allow me to continue to do that and to represent Wichita Falls and the 14 counties of District 69. But I appreciate y'all, appreciate you watching this, and would ask for your vote. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Frank. Now, Mr. Coppage, you have the floor for your closing statement.
Like Representative Frank, I want to thank y'all for having this event. I'm running for State Representative District 69 because voters deserve a choice when they cast their ballots. Throughout my life, I have been presented with opportunities, sometimes disguised as problems. Texas has big problems, but we can turn them into opportunities. When that happens, Texans can stand tall and proud. Thank you. Vote to make a difference. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Coppage, thank you so much as well for that closing statement. Well, that does it for our 2024 debate with the candidates for Texas House in the 69th District. And we want to say a big thank you to both of you for agreeing to participate. And we also want to thank you at home for being with us.
Don't forget, early voting in Texas runs from Monday, October 21st, to Friday, November 1st.
And Texas voters who requested a mail-in ballot can drop off their ballot on Election Day. That's Tuesday, November 5th at 7 o'clock that night, and that's going to be at their county's early voting clerk's office.
So for Carney Porter, I'm Daryl Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us.